Awesome. So this is our first episode on the GTMer show, and we have an awesome guest today. We have with us Silky Agarwal, and she is into positioning and messaging. So the way she puts it is that she does no nonsense positioning and messaging for B2B companies. She's worked with many companies. She's worked with Freshworks, Netcore. She's worked with Jumper and Superwin as well. Previously, she was the head of marketing at Altria, and she was also a senior marketing manager at Zycus. So, and this is our first episode. So, thank you so much for taking the time, Silky. Thank you so much for joining.
Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited.
Awesome, awesome. So, please tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days. What are you working on right now?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the same thing. I'm consulting a couple of founders, mostly early stage B2B SaaS startups, and guiding them on positioning, how to position their products better, and then also translate that into effective messaging uh, for their prospect facing touch points, especially the website and in many cases the sales decks.
Awesome, awesome. There are numerous ways to segment a market by industry, by business model, by tech stack. So how do you choose the right one? How do you know exactly how to go about this?
Yeah, the thing is that when it comes to segmentation, like the the common way that businesses do segmentation is, based on what they find comfortable, when they find themselves most comfortable with. So, for example, they usually pick a geography that they are most familiar with. They pick an industry that they are most familiar with, and usually that's not the best way to do segmentation. For example, I'll give you this example of one of my clients who was a B2B SaaS founder, and his product was kind of a Slack bot. So it was a bot that used to work inside Slack. Now when we started working with him, he told me that he thinks his ICP is B2B SaaS companies. And he says B2B SaaS startups, right?
Yeah.
Now, he being a founder, he is most comfortable with B2B SaaS startups because he himself is a B2B SaaS startup founder, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing in his product which stops it from being useful to another industry, to another vertical, to a larger company, right? There's nothing, absolutely no reason for him to focus on B2B SaaS startups. Now, when we do the positioning exercise and we bring the segmentation criteria, we derive it from the product's value propositions. We look at what is the unique benefit of the product and who in this world of businesses, which kind of businesses would really value that benefit a lot. We just directly derive it from there, and what we come up with is two criteria. One is the business should have more than 100 employees. Okay, now that's not a startup. Right, a startup will not have like more than 100 employees. So if he had targeted B2B SaaS startups, he would have completely missed out on the fact that it should be more than 100 employees, the targeting. And then the other was the businesses should use Slack. That's like most obvious thing because it is a Slack bot. So for any business who uses Slack and has more than 100 employees, very simple segmentation criteria, but it really opens up the mind, right? Now he can go after healthcare, he can go after financial services and not restrict a self-limit his product to a particular vertical or a size of a company, just because he's most comfortable with it, right?
So a follow-up to that would be, when should a product manager or a founder start thinking about positioning and messaging? Because what I get a sense from what you've just said is that if you know who to target, it also impacts what the product will do, right? So if we maybe probably start with messaging and positioning, and then alongside start thinking about building the product also, is that the right time to start thinking about positioning and marketing, or when you've already built something?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like a lot of it is like chicken and egg situation where, what should come first, right? But that's not possible. You cannot do, always cannot do one before the other. Often, product takes precedence. So until unless something is built, we don't know how to position it. Because if we start with the positioning, we are starting with just a hypothesis, right? We have to have the product in hand, some version of it. It may not be a fully grown mature product, but there has to be some a problem that it is able to solve. So what I say is that there should be a product to problem fit. I'm not saying that there should be a PMF or a product to market fit for you to start doing positioning, because in a way positioning is also like a means to achieve product market fit. Like, sometimes when you don't have the positioning right, it becomes very difficult for you to achieve product market fit, right? But at least you should have the product problem fit. So there should be a validation around, yes, this is a problem, and yes, this product solves it in a logical, in a meaningful way. Once the product reaches there, then we can start working on the positioning and messaging. And then as we go along, both of them evolve, hand in hand, the product as well as the positioning.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So now let's try and think about positioning from first principles, right? What is it, and what do you try to achieve with it, really?
Oh, yeah. I have thought a lot about this. And, a lot of people have very different perceptions about positioning. And one of the like false perceptions about positioning that a lot of people hold, right? That positioning is something to do with the brand promise or the vision mission statements, which is not true, because those are more like the company's purpose or the company's why, as the Simon Sinek framework talks about. Again, like a lot of people think that positioning is something like a tagline, which it is not, right? Because that's more or less about copywriting, how to put your company's essence in a small phrase. Uh, then there are people who will say that, oh, positioning is basically, you draw this x-axis and y-axis about the market, and then you plot different vendors on the graph, and then you show how you are like different on this dimension or that dimension. But again, that is more like the visualization aspect of positioning. Like, how do you visualize it in the form of a graph or a plot a market landscape? What I like, the definition that I have come up with for myself, and it really like trying to simplify it super making it very easy for everyone to understand, is that positioning is basically how your product gets compared in a purchase, right? So if you are, let's say, and I can give you an example, right? Let's take Nano. It's an Indian example. It's not a tech example as such, but it's like something that everybody will understand. Now, Nano was a car which was launched in 1 lakh budget, right? Anybody could buy it in 1 lakh. Now, if I position Nano as the cheapest car, what happens is the way it gets compared in a purchase is going to get influenced in a certain way.
Right.
Now, if I position it as the cheapest car in the market, it's going to be compared with other cars, like against other cars, because we are calling it a car.
Right.
It's going to be compared with entry level cars because we are calling it the cheapest car. So somebody who's like buying a high end car will never even compare Nano when doing a purchase, right? So compared with somebody who's like a first time car buyer buying an entry level car. And what is it going to be compared on? One is price, of course, but we have already said it's cheapest one. So it's going to be compared on car qualities, right? Does it really give me the feeling of a car? Like, if I'm doing a test drive, does it feel like I'm driving a car? And in that comparison, it may be very difficult for Nano to win.
Correct. Right.
The point. And so by calling it that way, we have kind of, decided the fate of what will happen in a purchase comparison.
Correct.
Now, similarly, if I position Nano as safest family vehicle under 1 lakh,
Correct.
now what happens is it's going to be compared by people who are buying vehicles under 1 lakh.
Right.
And that's not going to include people who are buying cars. So people who are buying two-wheelers or scooters or bikes will look at it. Especially family purchases will look at it because they're buying it for their family comforts. And now they're going to compare it not on price. They're going to compare it on family safety. Right. And that was the original idea of Tata's when they came up with Nano. Somebody was watching a family driving on a two-wheeler and they were like, we need better, safer ways for our middle-class Indian families to travel on the roads. And they thought, can we make a car under 1 lakh? Because these people have that's the budget they have when they go buying a vehicle. And they made it, right? And so now that's a comparison where Nano can win more often, right?
Definitely.
Because now a person is comparing it on something like safety, which is non-negotiable, and you've put it in their mind that it's a family vehicle under 1 lakh. So they're like, yes, why not? Right? So for me, positioning is basically how your product gets compared in a purchase. And then when you talk about first principles, this whole comparison, it depends on it's dictated by 7 parts or 7 elements, right? There are 7 elements to it. So the first thing is what is getting compared. So is it Nano that's getting compared? Is that the product in B2B? Let's come to B2B SaaS. Like in case of Salesforce, when a few years back, what they wanted to get compared, like what the product that they wanted to lead with was their CRM. So another company that I worked with, which was Zycus many years back, they wanted to lead with the entire suite, not just one product. So in their case, the main offering that was being compared was their full suite. So it's like the first thing is the what do you want them to compare? Is it one module? Is it a full suite? What is it? Then who is going to compare? Who do you want to do is it like in case of now, is it a vehicle like car buyer or is it two-wheeler buyer? Like who do you want to do the comparison? That's the second one. The third is against whom? So if your product is called whatever Apex, then Apex gets compared against what other products, right? In the market, there's so many options, but you can decide who you get compared with and to increase your chances of winning. And then, there's the fourth element, which is what features do you want them to look at when they're doing the comparison? So like, you want them to look at your pricing? Do you want them to look at your whatever templates? Do you want to look at, what is the characteristic that you want them to consider when they're doing the comparison? And then on what qualities? So qualities are more like parameters or criteria, like, okay, what's most important to me? Is it affordability? Is it safety? Is it data quality? Is it I don't know, speed, So there are so many perspectives around which parameter do you prefer to get compared. Again, you can choose to increase your chances of winning in the purchase comparison. And then there is so we've covered product, buyer, alternatives, the differentiators, the features, the value prop. There's 5 of them. There's 2 more. One is for doing what job. So a particular product can be perceived as doing a number of jobs, but that this is the particular job that I want them to think about when they're comparing my product. For doing what? So I will give you an very basic example of this. Somebody's buying a paper, right? They are they buying it for making a greeting card, or are they buying it to make a poster? What is the job that they are going to be comparing you for, right? And then the last of the 7th piece in the whole comparison, which is in which boundary do you want to be compared? Because if you and I were selling products that will be compared with billions of other products in the market, we don't stand a chance, right? So we have to give a boundary. In this boundary, we want to be compared. So let's look at paper, right? If it's a paper, do you want to be compared in the category of handmade papers or recycled papers or I don't know, heavy duty papers? So you can decide the boundary also. And so all of these 7 elements make up positioning. And when we deliberately choose what is this best way to position ourselves along all these dimensions, we increase our chances of winning when somebody is doing the comparison purchasing.
Awesome, awesome. So, having all this in mind, how do we go about, picking up a project on positioning? What would the process of, figuring out the
Uh,
positioning
when you say how do we go about the project of positioning, you mean
process of
like process? Yeah. So again, that's very interesting, right? I believe like there should be it should be a non-linear way. It shouldn't be like, you derive X, and then based on X, you derive Y, and then based on Y, you derive Z. That's typically, currently that's the accepted model of doing positioning. But I feel there is a lot of risk there, because in case your X is not correct, the first step is not correct, your Y is dependent on X, your Z is dependent on Y, and then everything else, you can end up going in a completely wrong direction. So I believe in thinking of positioning as a puzzle, where, instead of going linear, that, okay, I want to first find the first row, first column piece, and then the second row, second column, whatever. But, start with the pieces that you are most confident about.
Okay.
So in every company, there will be certain pieces, the 7 things that I shared with you, there will be certain pieces where there will be like, we are very sure it's this category. Like I was working with a company, and in their case, it was kind of an API. Very clear, it's XYZ kind of API. There's no overthinking. You don't need to start from X to derive that, right? You can refine that further for sure, but that's the thing. Whatever just put that on paper, right? That, okay, out of these 7 elements, this thing we know it is this. For example, in some cases, it will be like the product. You're selling just one product, for example. You don't have to think about the product, right? This is the product that you're selling. This is the job it does. Now, for the pieces that you do not know or you're not sure of, for those pieces, you can have kind of an evaluation. Like, is it this? Is it that? You can actually think about it. So what I have done is, for each of these 7 elements, I have defined a criteria. Now, that if that criteria is met, then you can be pretty sure that it is right. Okay. So for the product, my criteria is that whatever product you are selling in like a first sale. So I'm not talking about a cross sell or a sale that happens, with an existing customer. Talking about a new product. Whatever you're trying to sell to the new prospect, is that your hero offering? In some companies, their hero offering is B, but they're always trying to sell A. Or in some cases, their hero offering is A plus B.
Okay.
They're always trying to sell A.
Okay. Why does that even happen? I mean, when you're selling to somebody, you might probably already know what their requirement is, what they might be expecting. So doesn't that become more obvious for them to know what to sell? I think what my experience has been is that when you're selling rather than marketing, right? When you're selling, it becomes a bit more clearer because you know who exactly you're selling to, in a one-to-one setup, right? So then, if that is how I have felt, why do you think this would happen?
So one is that because the positioning foundation is a little loose. So the buyer is not kind of profiled well.
Okay.
So you are talking to 10 very different kinds of buyers with very different kinds of requirements.
Okay.
And then you are so desperate to sell that you are basically saying these are the things I have, and whatever you want to buy.
Correct.
By putting so much control in the hands of buyer, what is happening is the buyer is going to compare whatever with whatever. Like,
Correct.
your hero offering may be like, in my case, I do positioning plus messaging. So my hero offering is positioning and messaging together. Like, if somebody were to ask me, Saki, I just want the web copy. Just write the web copy. I don't want the positioning bit. I should say no, because that is not my hero offering.
Correct.
And if I were to do just web copy, I would be compared with any content writer, and my work will be compared with the price also will be compared with any content writer. Right. But I know that my hero offering is always positioning plus messaging. So it is important for you to lead with your hero offering every time. Otherwise, the buyer or the market will fling you in any direction, and will be very difficult for you to kind of create some kind of consistency in, this is what we lead with, this is what we sell in the first sale. This is where we have the greatest chances of winning. And you need that if you need to grow.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Definitely. Great. So, how should an early stage startup go about positioning themselves when it lacks any brand recognition and maybe have limited resources, right? And what questions should they ask themselves? Where should they begin?
Yeah, I'll share that, but I think I didn't I was not able to fully complete the answer for the previous question. So
Sure.
I think you asked and we just went into a different
Correct.
direction.
Yeah.
So there is the product. The product has to be your hero offering. The second thing is your buyer, right? Who is comparing. Now, the person who you're selling to needs to be someone who desires the product, right? That's like the basic thing. We are trying to sell to somebody who doesn't desire your product, then your buyer profiling is incorrect. There's something wrong there. Then the third thing is, who they're comparing you against, right? The alternatives. Now, the alternatives, the things that you get compared with, the things that you consider your alternatives should be something that can replace you.
Okay.
If it is something that cannot replace you, then there's a problem with your position. So I'll give you an example. I was advising a startup who was building something like a sales pitch or a sales proposal personalization software.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when they were talking to prospects, what was happening is those prospects were saying, oh, we already have PandaDoc. PandaDoc is a software which creates invoices and contracts and proposals also, but it is not something that can really replace a sales pitch personalization or that kind of a software. Now, they are being compared with something that cannot even replace them, right? So they have no chances of then convincing the buyer that, so your alternatives have to be something that can replace you.
Okay. Makes sense.
I mean, the characteristics that you want the buyer to look at when they are comparing your product have to be your differentiators. Those characteristics should be something that the alternatives that you're going to get compared with against, they should be lacking in those characteristics. So it has to be differentiator that gets compared. Then the value prop or the parameters, the criteria, the qualities basically, again, on which you want the comparison to be, they should be something that only you can fulfill. Only your product should be provide those unique benefits. It's a promise that other alternatives should not be able to keep. Only you should be able to keep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're talking about how to solve for how the process for doing positioning. We covered till I think the unique value propositions, right? And then The job to be done. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
that's very interesting. So the job for which your product is being compared, right?
Hmm.
That should be within your product's capabilities. So I
Hmm.
have seen startup founders go into a meeting with the prospect, show them the entire demo, XYZ, and the prospect tells, can your product do this?
Hmm.
And it's nowhere in the product's capabilities today.
Hmm.
And it's nowhere in the roadmap.
Hmm.
And the founders are like, yeah, we are building it. Yeah, building it, right? So it's a job that your product doesn't cannot do today. So then there's a problem with positioning, because
Hmm.
the way you positioned it is making the prospect think about a job
Hmm.
that your product is not even to do right now. You
I
don't
never
stand a
realized that
chance
was
to
a
win.
positioning problem, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It is a positioning problem to a great extent, because the way you've positioned it, you've created a perception bigger
Hmm.
than what your product is.
Hmm.
And you have basically अपने लिए गड्ढा खोद लिया है आपने, कि
Right.
पहले आपने बोला कि मेरा प्रोडक्ट ये चीज के लिए बना है, and then the prospect is asking, so can you do this, can you do this, can you do this, and all the answers are no, today we can't, but we are building it. No, today we can't, but we are building it. So the prospect will be like, then why are you even trying to sell to me?
Right.
Right?
Makes sense.
So and then the last one, which is the boundary in which your product is being compared.
Hmm.
As I said, like, is it the recycled papers boundary? Is it the handmade papers boundary? What's the market category? That should help fully define your product.
Right.
So if you were to say that my product is this kind of product, whether you call it a CRM, whether you call it I don't know, lead enrichment software, or you call it email personalization software, whatever category or box you are bucketing your product in, whatever label you're classifying it with, it should helpfully describe your product, should not be misleading, and there should not be any scope for misinterpretation there.
Makes sense. Right. So, how do we go about positioning in a crowded market, right? Where the product gets the job done, but isn't necessarily differentiated on a product level. How do we go about
Yeah.
positioning ourselves there?
Right. So when it comes to differentiation, we have to broaden the perspectives. Typically, when we think about differentiation, we think, okay, it's something to do with product. Like the
Hmm.
product has to have some unique feature, capability, skill set, XYZ. But beyond product, there are many other ways of differentiating.
Hmm.
So there are around 6 P's around which you can differentiate, and there can be many more. You just have to think and open your mind. So this product, one is obviously the product, and it could be the front end aspects of the product. It could be the invisible or the back end aspects of the product.
Hmm.
Then there is pricing. So you can have a very, very unique pricing model,
Hmm.
and that can be your differentiator.
Correct.
Today, I see a lot of Indian B2B SaaS companies are differentiating in the way they price their product.
Okay. Maybe if you could give any examples.
For example, pricing for a unit,
Hmm.
right? And that unit being something that, so I'll give you a very hypothetical example. Let's say that yours is a campaign automation tool, email campaign automation tool,
Hmm.
let's say, right?
Hmm.
And you are pricing it based on the number of campaigns that are run.
Hmm.
Instead of pricing it by the number of contacts that you have in the
Number of users who are using that within a company.
yeah, but you've decided, okay, we will price it based on the number of campaigns that you run. If you're sending
Hmm.
5 emails in a month, it will be 5 into whatever. If
Hmm.
you're sending 20 emails in a month, it will be 20 into whatever.
Hmm.
And they may say that it will be postpaid.
Hmm.
That you don't have to pay upfront, based on the usage will bill your whatever credit card, right?
Right.
So that becomes very unique kind of pricing, and you can differentiate on that. You can say that, okay, see, in that kind of if you go with that vendor, you have to pay this much. No, what, even if you don't run any campaigns, because they are charging you for users for the entire year. But if you buy my tool, I'm going to charge you only for the number of campaigns you run. So if you are a business who has seasonal promotions, like, on Diwali or on whatever, Thanksgiving or Christmas, so you can, adjust your, reduce or increase the usage based on your campaign needs and pay me only for that.
Makes sense.
So that's another way of, like, that's the second P which you can differentiate. Then there is people. So people has become a very big differentiator. Because the experience of working with the company is something that's so deep seated. When a customer talks to you and works with you, the experience that they have with the people that they're working with, whether it's a salesperson or the founder or the support team, that can be a huge differentiator. And especially if you are in a crowded market where there are a lot of players and the market leader has some sort of monopoly, and they don't really care that much about customer service or support, you can pick this angle to be your differentiator. Then there is a way of differentiating on the purchase process itself.
Okay.
So sometimes the process of purchasing is very complicated in other kind of options. So you can make your purchase process like super easy. It could be checkout. It could be your pricing plans could be like super easy to compare and select the packaging, the way you do it. You could have, for example, yeah, I mean, you could have something unique in the way you help the buyer purchase, which will make them feel, okay, this is much easier, much more convenient, much more simpler, and much more risk-free, right? You may not lock them into 2-3 year contracts.
Correct.
You may have very, cancellations, that kind of thing. And then there's the process of onboarding. That's the another P, the process.
Right.
So how does the adoption, training, and onboarding happen? Configuration, setup. It's a huge pain area for people in B2B SaaS especially, right? That can be a place where you can differentiate, if not in the product.
Right.
And then always there is perception. Perception is the last P in the 6 Ps that I have made. Perception is about, like, you're in your market. How are people, like, what's the word of mouth about you? Are you seen as a company that so here it's a little bit about branding. This is one area where the brand perception can be a differentiator. So for example, I see Basecamp has built a certain kind of brand perception for themselves, which is kind of a differentiator for them, because they are in a space of project management kind of tool, which is, there is feature parity coming in. I mean, almost every project management tool can do everything, right? But their brand perception is very different.
I am not aware of their brand perception. What is it? If you could,
So I have not, even I have not measured it, but I see, like, the kind of things that they do. They launched a book called Rework, if I'm not wrong, which was around the idea of work should not be like, against the culture of workaholic corporate culture, that, work should not be like, taking all your time and energy. There should be a balance, work-life balance. And that, I've not read that book, but this is from the little that I know, and that is helping them.
So brand has written a book about something like this, right?
Basecamp founders and the founding team launched this book called The Rework or something. Reworks, I name. And then they continuously talk about their value system, that, we believe in this. We, work should not be like this. Work should be easy. Work should be productive. You don't need meetings. Like one of their campaigns, if I'm not wrong, was very interesting. The hoardings were saying like, dear VP of wasting my time, something like that. Please let me do my work, right? So they have owned the cause of the problem that work from home employees, or even remote working culture today. People have like too many meetings, nothing getting done.
Right. True.
So they've owned that. Their perception is built around that. So uh, that becomes a differentiator. They don't have to say that we have this feature, but don't necessarily have to. They've built the perception that will draw people in.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there are so many ways to differentiate beyond the product in a crowded market.
So what I can sense is that there are multiple ways we can position ourselves, right? So how do we know which one to pick, and how do we process whether the kind of positioning we have picked is working or not? Maybe there is any better way of positioning ourselves. How do we figure that part out?
Yeah, so it's basically very, very straightforward. I'm currently building a positioning diagnostic, which is like a 7 or 8 question, you can say questionnaire, built of 7 or 8 questions, which you answer yourself against, and you will get a score of whether your positioning is working in your favor or not. And that has basically the same things that you will anyways need to do when you are trying to carve out your positioning. So the first question is, for example, the thing you're trying to sell, is it your hero offering? You can rate on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe the answer is not in a simple of yes or no. Rate it on a scale of 10. Similarly, there are questions around each of the 7 or 8 pieces that we spoke about. The last one is, with this position, with your existing whatever positioning you have, are you able to convert prospects into paying customers? That's the proof of the pudding, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is what should actually move you to really, that'll give you the clue to whether your positioning is there or not there.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool.
So when after coming
Yeah.
from a sales call, for example, if you feel like the way my product was perceived, the way it was compared, the way the parameters on which it was compared, the job for which it was compared, all of this works in your favor, and then at the end of the day, like, the prospect comes back and says, hey, I would like to try, or I want to do, can we do a trial or a POC? That means your positioning is working in your favor and it's right.
Awesome. Makes sense. Great. So I have one last question, right? How do we go about repositioning an established brand? First of all, figuring out whether there's even a need for a positioning or not. And if there is, then how do we go about repositioning an established brand? When might it be necessary, and what would the repositioning strategy
Yeah,
look like?
great question. So repositioning is, like, I would say, more, it needs a little bit more thought than positioning a fresh product. In repositioning, the main thing is, first of all, figuring out which of the 7 areas is the problem. So we spoke about few things, right? The product, the buyer, the market category, the job to be done, the features or the differentiators, the value prop, all of those things. Where is the problem? You have to figure it out. Sometimes problem is in the category, for example. The category, like if we take the example of Nokia, the mobile phones market had evolved very different. It became a very different market category with the rise of Apples and Samsung. So the category had evolved. Now, in the same boundary, Nokia, the chances of winning reduced. Earlier, it was winning in the same category, it was winning. Now the category itself has evolved. So the chances of winning that category reduce.
Right.
So it's a sign that you have to either, like, change the product to fit the category, or you have to choose a like subcategory, or position yourself in a different category where you have greater chance of winning. Then there could be problem with differentiators. So let's say if we look at camera quality in phones. Now camera quality is slowly becoming like table stakes. So any phone which has like very poor camera quality cannot stand a chance. And there could be cases where the feature which used to be your differentiator earlier, now everyone has it.
Right.
So you have to find another differentiator. You have to
Correct.
either be imaginative and creative to come up with a new way of differentiating yourself if you're in the same category, or you go change the category and like slightly and see if your differentiators are still strong enough for that category. Right? In some cases, the buyers evolve. So
Okay.
if I give you an example, let's take the phone market only. Earlier, people were buying their first mobile phone, let's say maybe in their 20s, right? So if you are still targeting like an age group of 20 plus, you will go wrong. You need to make sure you need to reposition to target younger teens now, because now people are buying their first phone much earlier in their life,
Right.
right? So yeah, I mean, all these 7 dimensions of business and the founder and basically the executive team has to be constantly on top of these 7 things. And they need to keep hitting themselves against it every few months. That are our differentiators still our differentiators? Is our unique value prop still unique to us? Is the category still something that we can win in? Are the competitors still something that we are comparable to? So all of these questions need to constantly checked, and whenever you see like a red flag anywhere, like, oh, it's now becoming very difficult to win this kind of clients. Earlier we used to win very easily, but now they are not buying us. Then there's a problem in one of these 7 areas. And
Right.
that's when we need to reposition.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. So those were all the questions I had for you today, Silky. I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure those who are gonna watch this podcast, they will learn a lot
I
too.
hope.
Uh,
This is my first time giving a podcast on positioning. So I hope I made sense.
Obviously, of course, you did. I was also curious about why you specifically picked positioning and messaging out of everything that you could have done in marketing. I was just curious about this.
Yeah, so lot of reasons behind it. One is that I come from a communications marketing advertising school, MICA, which has positioned itself as, at that time, it was positioned as the C school in all the B schools. So, right, it was the communication school, the mecca of advertising and marketing. So, I specialized in this subject, which was advertising, positioning, messaging. And it was like my, you can say, like, very close to my heart, because there is, I think you come to know what you want to do, right? And that is something that I've always wanted to do. It would turn out to be B2B SaaS is the surprise thing. Earlier I was, when we were studying, I never imagined that I would be doing positioning for B2B SaaS or B2B, any B2B company. That was one reason. The other reason is, I think my background has been, my parents, for example, my mom has been a teacher and my dad is a lawyer.
Acha.
So both of these professions are very deeply involved in perception management. So as a lawyer, for example, if you have to defend the victim, you position the victim as the hero. If you are given to defend a criminal, you position the criminal as the hero, right? You don't get to choose who you want to position. You have to just do your job. So I think think from a very young age, I really found it very fascinating how influencing the perception, you can really change human behavior.
Right.
When you make somebody perceive your product or whatever thing you're positioning in a slightly different way, you can confidently, kind of guess or kind of control how they would behave
Right.
in terms of choosing your product or not. And that's what it's something like there's a lot of psychology involved in it. There's a lot of philosophy involved in it. Um, and
And
yeah,
is
I
that
mean,
the reason why you've not gone down the CMO route and you've chosen to get into consultancy?
yes, absolutely. Because being a CMO is about managing budgets, hiring people, interviewing candidates, attending meetings after meetings after meetings, reporting, XYZ metrics to tons of people, going on this quarterly business reviews and that and this. It's a different world. It's a great world for those who are great at it. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to go deep into this field, and the best way to do that was to really move out of the CMO race and just
Correct.
start
So,
doing.
does consultancy help you get deeper into it, or maybe working on a specific project for a very long time would have worked better? I'm just trying to understand how that would have worked.
Yeah, initially, the WorkX, the full-time WorkX is always very helpful because that's when you go deep into a company or product in multiple areas. You dabble in everything. You're
Hmm.
doing events management also, you're doing analyst relations also, you're doing so many things. So your perspective that you gain helps. But when you're doing consulting, you become very good at just that thing, that one thing. You cannot become very good at one thing when you're in a full-time job doing a lot of things, especially at a high level, like a CMO level. You have to manage others.
Hmm.
You have to get the best work out of other people,
Makes
whether
sense.
it's or a consultant or a employee. So yeah, I mean, you don't get to sit and just go deep into your zone. Like now, today I'm going to work on this project. That like CMOs don't have that luxury, right?
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Great talking to you, Silky. Thank you so much for doing this. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so
Uh,
much for having me, Rutuj.